Hello friends, and welcome to the Sleeping and Conference Center tonight. My name is Scott Hennon, host of the What's on Your Mind program. And as we've been talking about for a couple of days, we have a special guest in town. He's here actually to talk to the North Dakota Petroleum Council faithful tomorrow. And we'll be doing that to all of the folks gathered for their annual meeting. And of course, in addition to that, we have a candidate for governor in North Dakota joining us as well. Pete Hegseth has written a great book. We've talked about a couple times on the air, and it will be available for sale tonight as well. But the book actually is called In the Arena. And the book really, the framework for the book is a breakdown of a great motivational speech from the one and only Teddy Roosevelt, the one president we know a little something about in North Dakota who spent some time here. And also really a call to leaders to help reinvigorate America. So it's not only a good book, it's a timely book, much needed book given everything that's going on right now. So it'll be a fun night tonight. I'll ask a couple of questions of Pete and also of Doug, two extraordinary leaders, and then we'll give you a chance to ask them questions as well. And then Pete will be sticking around to sign copies of the book that'll happen a little later on. Without any further ado, let me first welcome the Republican gubernatorial candidate for governor in North Dakota, Mr. Doug Burgum. Doug, come on out. There we go. And then also, you might have seen him on Fox News Channel just a few hours ago from down in the Twin Cities. He's a Minnesota resident. We're glad for that, although he's got some work to do in transforming that state. I don't know what's happened over there, but he's tried, he certainly has. But he's been doing a lot of reporting on the terrorist attack at the St. Cloud Crossroads Mall over the weekend. So you see him on the Fox News Channel. Now you get to read a great book that he's done. And of course, we have the great honor of welcoming him and thanking him for his service in Iraq and Afghanistan as well. Please give a warm North Dakota welcome for Pete Hegseth. All right, this is going to be a fun night tonight. We appreciate this very much, and welcome as well to our Facebook Live audience that are checking us out on Facebook Live tonight as well, and looking forward to getting a few of your questions as well. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and I'll hit the audience and let these guys take questions from you as well. Pete, let me start with you. First of all, welcome to North Dakota.
Thanks for having me. I don't know if this is on yet or not, but good to go? Thanks. It's great to be here.
And did you tell me that you yet to make a trip to North Dakota? This was it?
No, I haven't been to Minot. I've been to North Dakota before. Okay. But I know I'm with some Vikings fans here, right?
Yeah.
How about that win last year?
Yeah, I think we picked up a few more Vikings fans after that Packer win. So things are looking pretty good in that regard. I'm going to switch mics with you, Pete, just so I can hear you. I'll give you a handheld, and you can give me the little tiny mic there. So that'll be good. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. They want to hear you. They hear me every day. They have enough of that, I tell you that.
Oh, they could always use more of you.
So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we were watching on Fox News earlier, covering the story in St. Cloud, and I don't know. Every time you think that we're sort of on the track that we're on related to this presidential race, something like this waxes between the eyes, and it's reality once again. You think this will cause 50 some days to an election, folks to focus a little more on this presidential race?
I think it already has, and we're dealing in an environment politically where I think the electorate is looking at our political leaders, and they look at someone like Barack Obama or in Minnesota, Mark Dayton, and they say, they're not telling me the truth. They look at me and say that it's not radical, that the Islamic State is not Islamic, and that the threat is receding, and that they're doing everything they can, yet proof on the ground is that it's the opposite. So you see an incident like this happen in St. Cloud, which is terribly unfortunate, and Governor Dayton comes out with a statement about intolerance and tolerance, and people say, listen, Minnesota's a tolerant place. We tolerate anybody. We welcome anybody. We want more people in Minnesota. But all we ask is that when you come here, you become a part of the social contract and the fabric of your community. And the problem is the FBI and the Attorney General have made very clear Minnesota has a terrorist recruitment problem. And the Somali Muslim population there is in denial and in some ways complicit with that problem. And our leaders won't call it out. And so residents of St. Cloud or Minneapolis or Rochester are rightly frustrated, concerned, and feel like their leadership is detached from the reality they live in. Because when it comes to refugees, it's not the elites in Washington, D.C. or on the coasts or on Summit Avenue in St. Paul who live with that policy. It's people in communities who absorb undereducated populations that may not have the desire to invest the way we want to, and they're left to make sure it works. And if that works, it's not just it doesn't work, but you've got radicalization and now violence in a mall. They want leaders that will take that problem head on. And so I think the anxiety is only heightened in Minnesota and nationally when an incident like this happens and our leaders sort of dismiss it or almost blame Minnesotans or Americans to say, you're not tolerant enough, that's why this is happening. And they say, no, we are. There's a violent ideology seeking our destruction, and some are using that to justify violence. It will only feed into the narrative that Trump has talked about, which is, I want to at least speak truth to you and be honest with the threat that we face. And I think people are reacting to that.
Most people will think this is a crazy connection, but I was driving to St. Cloud where my parents lived. I lived in Grand Forks at the time, and drove by St. Joseph, Minnesota on October 22nd, umpteen years ago, and there were all these police cars at a Tom Thumb, and it was because they were looking for Jacob Wetterling. And I'll never forget that. You know, I didn't know what it was at the time, but I get home and find out they kidnapped a little boy in St. Cloud. I feel the same way now. It's like, okay, yeah, I know San Bernardino happens. I know Orlando happens in some club. I know it can happen anywhere around the globe, but it's happening here. Doug, do you think that? I mean, when you heard St. Cloud, you think, oh my gosh. I mean, Minnesota governor's dealing with it, and maybe a North Dakota governor soon. I mean, it's here too, isn't it?
Well, yes, and I think we can all relate to, St. Cloud. It feels like that's getting closer to home, but then the reports out today that the attacker actually lived in Fargo for a period of time, at least in terms of early reports are that he had an address in Fargo. And so again, I think this is something that's starting to touch all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. It just is really, I know Donald Trump got a lot of grief when he came out and read that statement that said, we're done. You're not coming here from Muslim countries. He didn't word it well. It was clunky, but I think the sentiment is one people are going to look at when things like this happen. Do you agree, Pete?
I do agree. Listen, Donald Trump says things in the ways that Donald Trump does. But the sentiment he was talking about is, hey, we're facing an enemy right now in ISIS, the Islamic State, who has said they want to use the chaos and the refugee crisis through which to infiltrate that refugee population to stage people in Europe and America. It's best that we listen to the intentions of our enemies, especially when there are millions of people pouring into Europe, where we have no idea where they're going. And you see the attacks in Europe. And Europe is a preview, unfortunately. When you gut your military to pay for your welfare state, you open up your borders, you don't demand assimilation and allegiance, you get a lot of the balkanization and problems that you have there. So when you look at, say, the refugee resettlement program of Somali refugees in Minnesota, would it not be prudent for Minnesota to take a look at it and say, maybe we hit pause. Maybe we make sure we have our arms around it and that the population that is here is assimilating properly and becoming part of the fabric of Minnesota. Because we should all be ashamed of the fact that there are terror attacks happening in our streets, that there are videos coming out from Al-Shabaab saying the Mall of America is next. We've seen those videos. They're out. They're talking about it. And if we don't feel like we have our arms around it and the FBI is saying we have a terror recruitment problem, then why are we welcoming thousands and tens of thousands more, just inviting more chaos? And the left will say, what will the left say? Pete, you're racist. Donald Trump, you're racist. You're bigoted. You're xenophobic. And we have to stand up and say, I'm none of those. I don't hate what's in front of me. I don't hate anybody, but I love what's behind me. I love my country. I love my state. I love my community. And I'm willing to make sure that those come here feel the same way. America is not a geography. It's not a race. It's not any of that. It is an idea and a social contract. We've always made sure that people that come here invest the same way other populations have. That's all we're asking for. And that has nothing to do with racism or bigotry. It has to do with simple common sense. And Donald Trump is speaking to that at the national level. And I think candidates at the local and other level are reacting to that and saying, hey, we could hit the pause where we are too.
Hillary Clinton actually blamed him for the terrorism today. I thought that was about as over the top. I mean, Donald Trump can be over the top with his answers sometimes. I thought she went that far the other way and somehow blaming him because they're motivated by him and his actions. So hard to believe it happened. Let's talk a little bit about the book. I was chatting with Doug the other day about when we were putting together some of the details of this event, and he said that book's on my nightstand right now. So what do you think, Doug? A little review right now.
Well, it's fantastic. It was very fun when Scott was, hey, we've got this author coming here, and he tells me the name of the book. I'm looking at things, and I was like, hey, I bought this book like a month ago.
Well, I appreciate that.
Now I'm here, and I'm going to ask for ask you to sign it. So, but I would just say, it's an important and timely topic, because it's about engaged citizenship. Because if we're going to let this country just play out in the media as opposed to being engaged as citizens and jumping in the arena, then I think we're going to end up with what we end up. You get the government you deserve, I guess, is one way to think about it. And I don't want to be, co-opting a great book, but this, the 140-word quote, "the in the arena," I had on the folks that know me for a long time, I've had it framed on the wall. I've had it on the wall for decades. And when I was trying to make a decision this last winter, do I get out of the private sector and do I, jump into my first political race? I had a lot of people that said, hey, I don't know if I would do this with you. I mean, do you realize what you're getting into? Do you realize what's going to happen? And there's a lot of fear about people leaving the private sector and getting the public sector because of the way the press and others can treat people when they jump in. But I read the quote one more time and said, hey, it's not the critic that counts. It's the one that's in the arena. So part of it influenced me to jump in the arena. But so that's why I say it's timely. I hope that your book will influence people around this country to jump in and make a difference.
Well, I appreciate it. Can we get that added to the Amazon book page? I didn't pay him for that, I promise. No, thank you. Any author, it's always humbling and appreciative when someone has engaged with the material. And I feel the same way. I read that quote. It motivated my life. I carried it with me to Iraq and Afghanistan and Guantanamo Bay, put it up above where I slept. And then I read the entire speech, which Roosevelt gave this amazing speech in 1910 called Citizenship in a Republic. And it was kind of an un-PC speech before there was PC. It's what are the gritty, basic building blocks of citizens that are required of citizens in free peoples and republics. And he just lays it out in a basic format. So rather than Pete writing a book about what Pete thinks, I said, why don't I use this amazing speech from 1910 and bring it back to life? Because Roosevelt stood on the shoulders of Abraham Lincoln, revered him, just like Lincoln revered our founding generation. We're not that far away from that. And that's why we're all here, is to keep that promise of our founders alive, that free peoples can govern themselves. That's what. Now, whenever I talk to a room of conservatives, I always have to give the caveat of Roosevelt, who was the guy who founded, of course, the Progressive Party, and his Bull Moose candidacy gave the world Woodrow Wilson. The book is not about Teddy Roosevelt. It's about one speech where there's a great quote that comes from it that motivates a lot of people, that if we would wake up to the building blocks of that speech, America would be a better place. So thank you for that endorsement.
Why is it needed, Pete?
Why is it needed? Because we need a lot more Roosevelt in our society today. I mean, we live in a bike helmet, pink ribbon, fifth place trophy culture, where everyone gets a trophy and everyone's feelings are coddled, and there's safe spaces and trigger warnings and cocoons for everyone. No one's ever wrong, everyone's right. And the enemies we face, of course, don't have names, they're not radical. We're fighting the weather and amorphous causes that everyone can feel good about themselves. We need Teddy Roosevelt. We need grittiness, we need toughness, we need to rub some dirt on it, we need to remember why America is special, that it is exceptional, and worth fighting for. And we give a lot of that away. And the idea of being in the arena is that it's not invading armies that take away our liberties, usually. I mean, of course, invading armies can take away your liberties. Liberties are taken away in a death by 1,000 cuts. It's that one moment when you don't stand up. It's that one regulation you let get passed. It's that one candidate you don't oppose. It's that piece of curriculum you didn't stand up against in your school board. It's that thing at your church that sort of didn't look right, you kind of let happen. It's all of those moments when we decide in the arenas that we can affect not to stand up. And if we're all honest with ourselves, we've all done it. And if we're at a moment where our republic is about to be given away by people and agendas, our conversation, it's not about left-right anymore. John F. Kennedy would not be a Democrat, he'd be a conservative Republican today. The Democrat Party is a sort of a post-American leftist party that is totally lost on what the premise of America is. Now is the time for all of us to stand up and fight for it. I wrote this book before Donald Trump, but I think Trump I use the word Trump spine. I think he's fortified a lot of people to grow a Trump spine and say, enough is enough. I'm done apologizing. I'm done playing the politically correct game. I'm going to go out there and fight for this American experiment. And being in the arena is not about carrying a rifle only. I mean, guys do that, and that's great. But it's about whatever you can affect, getting out there and doing it, and being unafraid in the process. And that can mean running for office, which is exactly what you've done. We need people doing it because the other side mobilizes every single day.
So, Doug, when you were looking at that picture on the wall and saying, should I, shouldn't I, shouldn't I, and obviously going through all those things, what tripped the trigger? What was the thing that said, I'm going to get in the arena?
Well, I think it's for me, it's about impact. Because in the private sector, there's a lot of things you can do. I mean, one of the great, gifts you can give a community is, a high-paying job that lasts, because that, supports a family, supports a community, does that. If you can create jobs, and I've been very fortunate in North Dakota to be able to create thousands of jobs here, hiring kids from 220 different towns across the state, and that, gave me a lot of satisfaction. And with the success that I was able, come from that, free enterprise system, competitive markets, the ability to compete around the world with North Dakota kids competing around the world, and then taking that success and then plowing it back into, more startups, more, reinvesting in, revitalizing, communities. So I've been able to, have a lot of impact in my life, and I'm grateful for all the people that helped me do that. But then as I saw government grow and grow and grow and grow, at some point, I thought, if I'm going to be working 12 or 14 or 15 or 16 or 18 hours a day, and every day I'm bumping up against the government, why wouldn't I go try to fix that versus just being in the private sector bumping up against it? So that was where I made the decision is I got to get on the other side, because right now government's encroaching in so many things, particularly the federal government, encroaching on our state in so many different ways, that it said I got to jump in.
You think, Pete, that will bring more people to answer the call you're asking for?
No, I hope so. Because for the left, for Democrats, the holy grail is government. I mean, they oftentimes get their best and brightest to run for office because the pinnacle of public life is government, is holding a job in government. The government becomes the end-all be-all, whereas oftentimes on the conservative side, the Republican side, our best and brightest are creating jobs in 220 different communities across the state. And it takes that moment to step out and say, I've got to take the talents I have and bring them to that icky, messy, not so outcomes-based world of government, where usually the incentive is to just grow and grow and control and gobble up more. I mean, that's what government usually exists to do. And if you can pull people in who've actually created jobs, just like our nominee, who have that perspective of business, and will bring that, that's exactly what we need. And so I salute anybody who steps out and does it, especially who's done it as well as you have, because that gives a state like North Dakota. I think North Dakota's a state where our governor keeps his pension fund, by the way. Because it's got a regulatory environment that's more favorable. Because states like Minnesota, when the regulatory environment is so burdensome, the tax environment is so burdensome, companies start to leave. They can make decisions and they vote with their feet. That has implications for people who don't get those jobs in those 220 communities. And so to have someone who's created jobs at the top makes all the difference. So you guys are quite lucky to have what you have here with someone of that background running. And we can only hope in Minnesota we might have someone who gets it like that in the future too.
Question from Tom for either one of these two.
Pete, you served in Guantanamo Bay. How do
Yeah.
you feel about the plans to close it?
I think we should keep it open and double it, is what I think. I served there in 2004 and 2005. I was a guard. There were 700 detainees there then. Today there are roughly 60. I went back with Fox News Channel about 8 months ago, I think it was, to see the prison today. Anyone who's seen it knows that we bend over backwards as Americans to provide for the welfare of these radical Islamic terrorists. The disease they suffer from the most in Guantanamo Bay, diabetes, because they're fed so well. They get world-class health care, 300 channels of satellite television with wireless headphones, recreational time. I mean, you talk about, I walked the blocks and saw the blocks that they live in. These guys are very well taken care of. You talk to prison professionals, Guantanamo Bay is as good or better than any prisons we have here in the United States. It is secure, and the guards there do a fantastic job. So the left perpetuates this myth that Guantanamo Bay is some sort of a gulag, a sin, a propaganda stain on America. All you need to do is just go see it and then defend it. The last time Al-Qaeda used it as a propaganda tool was like 10 years ago, right? They just want to use it against us because they're using anything against us. If we close Guantanamo Bay today, the only group that gets a propaganda win is ISIS and Al-Qaeda. that looks at us and says, we got the Americans, we duped the Americans into closing their prison. And now they've got to house those folks either they're letting them go, or they're putting them somewhere else, or they're housed in the United States. If we are at war with radical Islam, with Islamism, then there's no better place to house and interrogate those folks than Guantanamo Bay. And we shouldn't be scared of that fact. And those who have seen it understand that. The problem is we've got a president that doesn't believe we're at war and is hell-bent no matter what to keep a campaign promise. So I hope Congress can do enough to prevent him from doing that so that that tool is at the disposal of a future commander-in-chief. Because he doesn't just want to, by the way, close Guantanamo Bay, the prison. He wants to give away Guantanamo Bay. He sees that as a relic of colonialism back to the Teddy Roosevelt days. I mean, he's not done apologizing to the world. If he could give that away, he would too, which speaks to the worldview of our president.
Question over here from Bill. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, this is for Doug. Due to the Dakota Access Pipeline and that, and all the legal issues that's going on, I thought that was decided by the courts, and then how can Obama just come in and step over and say, well, that's not the case, you know? What would you do, or how do we handle that? I mean,
Well, I think your question reflects the core issue, because this is no longer a pipeline sighting. It's not about relationships between tribes and the state. I mean, this is what this has been escalated to by the White House is a situation where a federal court ruled. They looked at all of the 54 pages. You can read it. It talks about here's our decision, and we're ruling in favor of the pipeline company that they've not only met but exceeded all the requirements they had for the legal siting of the pipeline. And so they do that, and then within 5 minutes of that, you've got the Department of Justice, the Department of Interior, and the Army Corps of Engineers, 3 agencies that normally wouldn't be collaborating, all putting out a joint letter saying that we are asking the company to stand down voluntarily. Key word there is voluntarily, because if you want to appeal a federal court ruling, you file an appeal and it goes through the court system. We've got the reason we have 3 branches of government, separation of powers, is so that we can have a judicial is where we work out our disputes. But in this case, again, we've got an administration. We talk about federal overreach. We've seen it throughout the last 8 years, and now we're seeing it here, where they're basically in a coordinated fashion saying we're going to try to kind of overrule what the court says. When I've commented on this week, I said this isn't really any more about the Dakota Access Pipeline. What if this was a fertilizer plant being built in North Dakota? What if this was another form of infrastructure? Again, this is infrastructure being built by private companies. 98% of it on private land. Being stopped by the federal government. What if it was a pharmaceutical company trying to come through with a breakthrough drug? What if it was Monsanto trying to come through with a new product that would help the farmers in our state? Again, take any one of these and they're approved legally, and then a challenge court says, hey, you can proceed. Administration says, no, we don't like that. I mean, so where does it stop if we have a situation where the administration can effectively block or change the rules after the game has been played? And so it really is a question about the rule of law. And when we lose the rule of law in this country, then I think we're really lost. And so it gives me grave concern to see how this thing has played out. And that is again separate. I mean, I think all of us are here in North Dakotans. We all want clean water. We all want clean air. We all want to respect our neighbors. We want to be respectful of Native Americans and their beliefs and their views, their religion. We want to be respectful of that because we are a tolerant, accepting people. But if in our country, at the federal level, they can come into what's basically a local siting issue and stop that, stop a private company from legally conducting their business. And I think that every business leader in the country ought to be nervous. And having been an executive in a large corporation where capital decisions get made, and when a capital decision gets made, like building a pipeline and capital gets deployed, that's what's the beginning of the job creation cycle. Because you get the jobs for the construction, then you get the impact of that. But in this case, it's about $7 a barrel for every barrel of oil coming out of North Dakota in terms of the price differential between shipping it on a safer pipeline route than by shipping it by rail. So that's dollars that are lost out of the economy. And so again, I think, across any industry, leaders are probably looking at this and saying, we better at least wait till this next election and see what's happened. If we've got a big infrastructure project or something, because we don't know, even if it's approved, it may be unapproved. And when you freeze capital, or they decide, hey, maybe we should go build that in another country, which in some cases capital flows across borders. A lot of the people who've got capital could decide, hey, why would I put it in the U.S.? I'll put it someplace where I know that I've got a better regulatory environment. So it's we use these buzzwords sometimes about federal overreach and stable regulatory environment, and people just think it's like buzzwords that people use on the news. But those two things actually have a huge impact on job creation and on the economic health of our company. And this was a dramatic blow against both of those. I mean, the federal overreach, creating a blow against regulatory stability. And so who knows what's going to happen going forward? I mean, how could you predict?
Have you been following this at all? It has been a story that has been a big deal locally, so much so I don't even know how much national attention it's getting. I mean, New York Times will pick up something here or there, but
isn't the route now skipping Minnesota and going south to Iowa?
yeah, this particular pipeline never was going through Minnesota because people knew better, right?
Sure.
The Sandpiper pipeline was supposed to go through Minnesota. That was an Enbridge project, and they finally gave up because the PUC in Minnesota is just tyrants.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I mean, I just think I was just going to say amen, and that's probably what I should just say. I mean, the reality is this is not. It goes back to the idea that Reagan talked about of elites in a distant capital dictating how you ought to live, as opposed to people and companies in states and jurisdictions making decisions that improve their own lives. That's the difference between modern day Democrats in Washington and Republicans at the state level who want to provide jobs and better lives for people. And the Democrat Party has a real problem on their hands because they're caught between traditional labor constituencies and their new environmentalist constituencies. And they're giving into the environmentalists because they're the ones at the forefront with the dollars running the campaigns. And I think it's an opportunity where Donald Trump has started to speak to new constituencies, Reagan Democrats, blue collar Democrats, whatever you want to call them, to say, hey, there's only one party here that's interested in making sure energy works, or new jobs are created, or we support coal miners, or whatever it is. Energy, fracking, all of those opportunities are things that Republicans need to be talking about proactively. And it's not just a North Dakota thing. In Minnesota, the realization is setting in that if you're in northern Minnesota, across the Iron Range or elsewhere, the old DFL that used to be your buddy is not your buddy anymore. They want to shut down the means by which you make a living because they're more beholden to Minneapolis-based environmental groups than they are to you. And so it takes leadership at the state level willing to fight back. So
and you only need to look at Minnesota to know what an extreme environmental movement can do. And they pretty much shut down Minnesota. My favorite example, people don't even remember it anymore, but Otter Tail Power was part of a partnership going to build a plant the day it opened. It would be 3 times cleaner than the one it replaced, and they shut it down. Minnesota wouldn't allow it to happen. South Dakota, North Dakota all went along, and then Minnesota wouldn't let it happen. I talked to Tim Peleni about it one time. He was governor at the time, and he just said, it's a battle not worth fighting. Basically what he said, sadly, just because of, that's the kind of political extremism that's going on. I think the most chilling thing of that whole situation that you asked Doug about is the fact that the decision from the Obama administration to override their own appointed judge didn't come until after the judge ruled, right? So if it was a really good decision on their part to say, hey, let's take another look at everything to make sure it's been done correctly, they'd have done it before the judge ruled. But the judge rules and says, no, they did it all right, then they pull that out of their pocket. It's just chilling because who in the right mind would invest, $3.8 billion in this case to build a pipeline knowing that that's what you could face? So it's a big problem, and I think we're at the tip of the spear on the thing right now in North Dakota, not to mention the whole sideshow of Black Lives Matter's energy division being here protesting for the last month and a half, and 3/4 of them, maybe more, have no connection to Standing Rock whatsoever. It isn't about concern about their water at Standing Rock. It's about co-opting an argument that they have and making their case. So it really is a sad time. Any other questions here? Lance, looks like you have one here. Go ahead.
Well, this is to Doug in regards to this pipeline thing. So are you basically saying that a resolution at the state level is history, that with the government overreach, we won't be able to resolve it in North Dakota at all anymore?
Well, I wouldn't say at all because we would want to explore every avenue, but the way it sits right now, which is it's basically a federal judge saying you can proceed, the administration effectively ordering the Corps of Engineers, Department of Interior, and Department of Justice to block it. I think to me this is nothing's going to happen between now and November 8th for sure. I mean, or until January. And if we end up with a Democratic president, I imagine that there will be again the same kind of pressures that Pete's talking about in terms of the environmental groups that are supporting Hillary. That she'll want to just keep stalling this thing out, because for many folks this is not a do we resolve it with A or B. It's like if you can just delay it and stall it, like we saw with the XL pipeline and others, that's victory. And so there's a challenge that we have here, for the private sector, for North Dakota Energy, for the rule of law, all the things that would say this thing ought to be reviewed. And I'm sure that if the company or others had said, hey, this either won or lost in the courts, businesses understand that businesses win in the courts and businesses lose in the courts. But to win in the courts and then be told that you now, after you won, you lost, that's the thing where this is completely new ground, and this is completely, I don't know this, am I saying, the word unprecedented probably doesn't even apply, because I don't know that it's ever happened. It certainly hasn't happened in my business lifetime where I've seen something like this.
It's what they call a rigged system. Really, if you look at it, it sounds like campaign talking points, but it's actually reality. If the system is not going to be dictated by courts, but ultimately by an administration that decides what that outcome will be no matter what, that's what people are frustrated with. That's what they're sick of. And they know the Leviathan of the federal government is so powerful and its pockets so endless that it will fight forever to crush the little guy who can't spend that time and resources, nor has the lobbyists or the accountants to keep up. But I think all of that said, the minute we do give up is the minute they automatically win. And so whatever levers we do have to fight back, we need to use. It's very analogous to education. The federalization of education through things like Common Core is a devastation of local control. School boards today have very little decisions they can actually make on curriculum and testing and standard, all of that. But it is incumbent upon school districts and people to elect school board members who will fight back. I saw it on Facebook just 10 minutes ago. Well, not 10 minutes ago, but 40 minutes ago, a school board in Florida voted to reject Common Core. They don't know if it's legally viable for them to do so, but they said, this is our community, we don't want it, we're going to vote to reject it, and we're going to keep fighting back. And I think that's the minute we just give in is the minute it inevitably happens to us. So I think that's another message of the book and why we need great candidates, because the scrap and the fight never stops. And the other side will try to use the wet blanket of regulation to get us to submit.
Another question, Rebecca.
This actually goes for both of you because Pete kind of answered it. Doug, North Dakota is a small state population-wise. We can be nimble. I'm not hearing anything from our statewide politicians, and it's modest at best, even from our federal politicians. How do we go about saying, enough's enough, common sense, bring the message to the people of North Dakota that understand that some things that are happening, like Dakota Access or there's some parts that just, we have to go call it and say, it ain't working, it's not right, and take the message but not sit back. And Pete kind of answered that, but from a policy point for you, that was one of my questions. And if I could tag on the second part of that is, Great Plains, tremendous company. What are your plans to build on North Dakota's young people and its status as a state of the union that is successful?
Two great questions. Let me take them in order. The first one, the things are clearly broken at the federal level in so many different ways, and we don't have enough time to cover all that. But let's just say, where do I find hope and inspiration? Well, after jumping into this race, getting through the primary in June, this summer I've been reaching out and had a chance to meet over 15 other Republican governors around the country, and there's a new wave of Republican governors that are coming directly into this office with a business background. Doug Ducey in Arizona was the CEO of Cold Stone Creameries. You've got Governor Pete Ricketts in Nebraska, who's along with his dad, had founded TD Ameritrade, very successful finance trading company. You've got Bruce Browner in Illinois, who was the CEO. You've got Rick Schneider in Michigan. You've got Charlie Baker in Massachusetts. Even you got Rick Scott in Florida, who came from a background in healthcare. Bevins in Kentucky. So you got guys that are business leaders that are getting in, and when I visit with all of them, there's a common mission across all of the group, which is, hey, look, if this nation was built to just implement, if the job of a governor was just to implement federal programs and hand down stuff that came from federal courts, then what do we need states for? I mean, the whole point of having 50 states is that each state should be a platform of innovation. Or it's a experiment in democracy within itself, where you can try different things in different states. And when I look at North Dakota and look at 750,000 people, I use the word nimble, which is a word I use all the time. 750,000 people, and we've got people that are connected. We all kind of know each other. 1 degree of separation. We got strong education. We got really good infrastructure. We got good university system. We got good school system. We got a lot of really positive things here that we can build on as a state. But first of all, I don't take myself that seriously ever. But let's understand, there are 80 metro areas in this country that have more people than North Dakota. Okay, there's 18 different mayors that have just mayors for single cities that have more people than North Dakota. When you're designing a healthcare solution for the nation for 340 million people in Washington D.C. and talk about one size fits all, and then that thing is supposed to work for 750,000 people in North Dakota. There just doesn't have a chance. I mean, we're so far off on whatever a bell curve, and if they're trying to design a national program for the thing down the middle, and so then I look at the budget challenges we're facing. I mean, we had a $6 billion general fund. We're gonna have revenue that's going to be somewhere less than 4.5. We're going to take about $1.5 billion out of the state budget. That's never been done before by any legislature, in any period of time, not by percentage or dollars amount. And to do that, we can't just tighten our belt, and we can't also go in and say, oh, we can't cut this because they're federal matching dollars. Because if we preserve everything in our budget that has federal matching dollars and cut everything that doesn't, we will be accepting as a state that all the programs made in Washington, D.C. are better than the ones that we could have invented here for ourselves. So we have to figure out a way to unhinge ourselves from being sort of captives to the lure of the federal match, and it's going to be very hard. It's going to be very, very hard, and it might take a plan that we say, hey, we got to look out 10 years, because it's not something we could do in one. We can't do it in one budget session. We can't do it overnight. But if we said, hey, in 10 years we want to be here, we want to be more independent, we want to be more free, we want to have programs that work for us. Let's set a path and figure out how we get there, because we've got the people resources, we have the ideas, we have the technology, and we should have the financial resources as well to figure out a way to unhinge ourselves from that. So that's part of the quest that I'm on, and I know that other Republican governors are as well. And I think that's part of the future for America, is we're going to have to fix this one state at a time. Your second, go ahead.
No, please answer the second question.
You comment on this.
Well, I'll just comment on that one. You hit it perfectly. Reject the money. Our federal government is a government of enumerated powers. Everything not given to the federal government is reserved to the states and local government. We have become addicted at the state level to federal funding. And we make, frankly, what it is it's feckless politicians, regardless of background, who can't handle the backlash if they were to say, we're not going to take the money, because when we take the king's money, we have to do the king's bidding. And we may actually be able to do things better in our state, or answer to the needs of our people better, because we understand the needs of our people better, by choosing to go our own route. It's easier said than done, because there are political backlash wherever you go. But if you can explain it, and then provide an alternative to people, I think folks are open to and hungry for real courage and real leadership, which is why when I look in Minnesota to how Minnesotans would ever get elected statewide, we need to look to Wisconsin that has had governors like Scott Walker, who have painted in bold colors, said they were going to do something, then got elected, and then did it, and then beat a recall. That's how you win, to quote Reagan and Cruz, not with pastels, but with bold colors of conservatism, about how you're going to improve people's lives. And they get you addicted with the dollars from the federal government. And every state has its own challenges, but on education or elsewhere, they get you addicted with the curriculum that costs money, and you reject it, and then you got to pay for it. Again, there's ways we can do it if we get creative, but ultimately it will require courage at the political level, which, as we all know, is pretty thin on its depth these days. Except for this guy, by the way.
On the second question, which is really about how do we diversify our economy? Because I think we've all seen that our state prospers when ag prices are high, and we prosper when oil prices are high. And then when we have a downturn in prices, like now, then all of a sudden we lose 20,000 jobs in this northwestern part of the state. We've got the budget shortfall at the state level because we're very dependent on those high commodity prices for income tax, sales tax, oil and gas production and extraction taxes. We're very dependent on some of those sources. So if you say, hey, we have to diversify the economy, and this is something that politicians talk about all the time, but when I, again, take a look at what I've been doing the last 33 years. We started with 10 people at Great Plains. We were 2,000 people by the time we got acquired by Microsoft 18 years later. So this is not an overnight thing, but you create these jobs. There's been about 25 or 30 spin-off companies in Fargo that have got roots that go back to people that left Great Plains and started other technology companies, and none of those jobs. Microsoft's there today. We became part of Microsoft in 2001. Microsoft's expanding the campus in Fargo. These are some of the highest paid jobs in the state with some of the best benefits, and they're adding hundreds of more jobs, right now. And none of those jobs are dependent on the price of oil or the price of ag prices. And I'm still very tied in. I grew up in Arthur, a town of 350 people. My grandfather started the grain elevator there. My cousins are still running it. I'm still on the board there. We've still got the family farmland that's there. So I'm really still very, very closely tied to agriculture. And if you take a look at ag, and say, why do we have low prices? We have low prices in part because American farmers are among the most productive in the world. I had guys that I went to high school, Bill Spivey was talking to him the other day, one of my friends from high school, he's farming 6,500 acres with himself and 2 hired men. We have trade tours that come in, from other, countries, and they're like, well, how many people does it take to, farm this? 3. Well, that can't be. Where's the other 30? We're so productive, and part of the reason why is because of technology. There's so much technology that's come into farming, whether it's from on the agronomy side, from the seed, the way we grow, the way we harvest, the way we process, technology. Then we take a look at oil prices. Why do we have, why are we having a shortfall at the state? Well, we're having a shortfall because oil prices are low. Why are oil prices low? Oil prices aren't low because of low demand around the world. They're low because we changed the supply curve with technology. And the supply curve changed because places like the Bakken suddenly, went from nowhere. What are we now? We're the number, 2 oil-producing state in the United States, but the U.S. itself has doubled its production in the last 10 years. And North Dakota is a big part of that, and that's because of technology. And so I think the thing, whether it's, trying to predict, the liberals that try to predict what the weather's going to be in 100 years, or whether, when I was a kid, everybody said, hey, we're going to run out of oil. That's a certainty. We're going to run out of oil. Hey, we're going to run out of food. There's going to be 1 billion people starving to death. Neither of those two things happen because technology changed the supply curve. And technology is changing the supply curve in education. When I was a kid, all we had was, a few teachers and a few books. That's how knowledge transfer happened. You go back to the schoolhouse on the prairie, the old pictures in North Dakota, and there was a schoolhouse with 1 teacher and even less books. But that's how knowledge got transferred. Now my son, who's a senior in high school, my youngest of 3, senior in high school, going to high school here in North Dakota, unfortunately his high school experience looks a lot like mine did. But guess what? Knowledge transfer, it's not the teacher in the book. Everybody in the state's got access to virtually all the world's information for free. The supply curve on information has changed because of technology, and we're approaching it the same way. And then we take a look at healthcare, and healthcare should have been improved by technology, but the federal government has got its fingers in every aspect of healthcare so far that healthcare is the one thing that we have right now where the cost keeps going up and up and up. Another place where the cost keeps going up is college tuition, rising faster than college tuition, going up faster than inflation. Guess what? Federal government, $1.3 trillion in student loans. You just got to follow the money. Wherever the federal government is involved in shoving money like student loans or shoving money around like they were, because the Affordable Care Act is not about, that's not about affordable care. It's an insurance subsidy scheme that's not actuarially sound. So you start messing around with markets and take pricing out of it, start doing all that subsidy. I can be for making sure that people can have an existing condition and get insurance. I can be for having great health care for everyone, but that doesn't mean I have to be for a plan that's uneconomically sound and it is going to bankrupt our nation. You know, those are two different things. So I just look at how technology has changed all these things. And then you say North Dakota, part of the reason we couldn't compete with the world was because we were too far away from markets. Well, with technology, you can build companies here that compete all over the world. And the technology, the distance disadvantage shrinks for us. And again, even, big manufacturing, there wasn't big manufacturing here. Well, because we didn't have enough labor supply. Well, now we don't need to have more graduates that know how to weld. We need more graduates to know how to program a robotic welder. And if we have those, then we can, you have one person who knows how to do that, he can program 100 robotic welders. I mean, labor problem solved, and we could build and manufacture stuff here that competes with anywhere in the world. And so this is a super exciting time for North Dakota because of all the paradigm shifts that are happening with technology. We can take advantage of that and have all this amazing stuff ahead of us if we understand how things are changing. But if we have people in Washington, D.C. that are stuck in an old model of thinking, in an old way of approaching stuff, and think that the predictions about, we're going to run out of oil, run out of food, anyway, it's just, we have to understand the world's changing, and a nimble little state like ours has an opportunity to take advantage of that and really flourish going forward.
All right, final question for you two, and Doug, I'll start with you, and then Pete, ask you to wrap up. In your case, Doug, you're obviously campaigning for governor, so you're a lot of things you talked about tonight is a way to improve the future and reshape and rethink everything. Keeping up with the theme of Pete's book, which is obviously in the arena, and ultimately using all those tools from that speech and the wonderful book he's written to reinvigorate America. Give me job one on reinvigorating North Dakota. What most excites you about reinvigorating North Dakota? What do we need to do?
Well, I'll pick one aspect that I haven't talked about at any point on the campaign trail, so we have something fresh and new here that fits into this thing. Because part of being in the arena is, Roosevelt in speech and in your book, you talk about, sort of the building block is the individual person who gets involved and gets engaged. And I think one of the things that's really frustrating, and I've seen this whether in any community, it's frustrating, which is, how do I get my input back into the system? How do I make sure that I'm heard? How do I get connected? And I think, in part of the original, some of the original
talk radio, call talk radio.
Talk radio is one way. But if you say, how do you get heard in today's world? I don't want to call them listening systems, but there are so many ways today where you can get feedback from the public, through all kinds of means, and particularly when we've got more and more people have got access to, personal computers, smartphones, other things. We have all kinds of ways. Because it's again, like, we don't just have to say, hey, we're going to have a hearing and it's at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, and only the people that happen to be in that geography and aren't working at 2 o'clock can come and do it. There's ways where we can reach out and get feedback from everybody. And I think that the reinvigorating North Dakota it's the teachers on the front lines. When we were building, Great Plains, our best ideas came from either our customers or from the people that were serving the customers on the front lines. The best ideas weren't coming from the executive offices, they were coming from the people that are out there. So how do we tap into the teachers in North Dakota, the nurses in North Dakota, the people that are on the front line working and get their ideas? And and when I say how do we do that, there are all kinds of systems that would allow us to do that today in ways that we couldn't before. And I think that one of the things we could have an explosion of innovation is if we let empower the people on the front lines, empower local leaders, push decision making down to local communities. If we do that, innovation is going to occur rapidly. Because at a time of rapid change, you do not want to have a centralized organization. We have rapid change going on in the world. As a strategy for our nation, strategy for the nation should be push decisions out of Washington to states push it down to local, because then we can have more innovation happening more rapidly at a local level than we can. The time you absolutely don't want to centralize. Listen, one last thing, on healthcare. The Soviet Union, when it collapsed in 1989, its entire economy was smaller than healthcare in the U.S. today. Healthcare in the U.S. today is a $3.7 trillion economy. History has proven you cannot centrally manage a $3.7 million economy, and you couldn't do it. You couldn't do it in 1989 when change wasn't happening as fast. Now it's happening at a more rapid pace. You have to decentralize it. You have to push it out. You have to do that. So we have to operate out of a decentralized thinking. We have to think about we're operating in a world of abundance, and we have to drive innovation from the front line.
way it's supposed to be.
Small towns.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
That's exactly what you just said. We need to put that back into
History's a good guide. You
Instead
bet.
of government and trying to control. But the problem is, it's a small handful of people that make the most noise, and they're the ones that are always winning. Just as you said, we got to protect everybody. We got to give everybody a trophy. That's not the way it is.
So Pete, we follow the blueprint of your book. What's job one that reinvigorates America?
The premise of the book, and I truly believe it, is job one is you. Job one is me. Job one is not watching TV and saying, look at how terrible the world is, and I'm going to go tweet about it. Because no one actually cares about your tweet or mine. What you can affect is whether you hold down a good job and earn for your family, whether you provide for the people around you, whether you are willing to fight for the things that you believe in the spheres that you can affect, whether you stand up and be counted when it's time to stand up and be counted, whether you have a strong, large family that's patriotic and believes in this country, whether you believe in character and something greater than yourself. A good citizen first cares for their own and their own orbit. Teddy Roosevelt warns against citizens of the world in his speech, which he calls utterly undesirable citizens of their own country, because they believe and they're attached to this amorphous idea of humanity more than they are their own family, community, neighbors, church, state, etc. We need to reinvigorate this understanding of why America is exceptional, why it is special, and do it with individuals working with other individuals, because the left has a noisy few. We have more that are largely silent. And history is always changed by the few that stand up. It's never been the majority of people, just like our founding generation. It's going to take that same few to mobilize the many to realize that we're giving away what we have. And I think the place where conservatives have to start with that was been promised. Our veterans have seen Obamacare. That's the VA. And there's a reason it doesn't work, because you can't mandate health care for 7 million veterans in Washington, D.C. And get the kind of outcomes that you want. We have abandoned education as conservatives for too long. We assume that high schools are going to reinforce the values. Unfortunately, bureaucrats from Washington have poisoned that pool, and principals and teachers don't have the kind of latitude they used to have. And we're not creating good citizens of the next generation. We have to go back and fight for school choice. We have to fight for vouchers, fight for homeschooling, for private schooling, for reinvigorating good public schools and charter schools. Whatever, empowering a parent to choose a path for their kids that will enrich them and make sure they're good citizens of the future, and not give in to the agenda of leftists and bureaucrats and others. So it starts with us, and I think it's with grateful Americans who recognize what we have and how special it is, and we pass it to the next generation, rather than pointing a finger to others and saying they're to blame. The left trades in blame, trades in class warfare, trades in balkanization. The real stronger together, ironically Hillary Clinton's slogan, are people who understand that America is stronger when we all appeal to founding values that is what this country was premised on, rather than dividing by class and by race and by gender, which is what the left does, unfortunately and tragically so well. Something Roosevelt warns against in the speech as well. So I keep invoking Roosevelt in the speech because he wrote a speech that's way better than anything I could write, which is why I try to bring it back to life and remind Americans that it's our job to do the same thing.
I want to get one Facebook question in, and it was a really important one from Peggy that said, Pete, is that a Coors Light? So you want to show that it's just a Diet Pepsi there, so we can clear that up.
I wish it was, but it's a Diet Pepsi.
Give these guys a big hand, and thank them for their time on the stage. Pete's going to hang right back there and sign copies of the book, so head on back and be in and take a picture. Doug needs to take off, and he'll give you a wave on the way back. Thank you, folks. Appreciate you very much. Good fun.